Hello there. Thank you for joining us. This is the Questionable Calls podcast. Been a little while, but we wanted to catch up since there's a whole lot going on. As far as basketball wise and playoffs wise and all of that stuff. So wanted to check in, but we haven't been on in a while. And one of the things that Clark, you and I have been talking about a lot is the story. Minnesota just beat Denver in the playoffs last weekend. And the story coming out of that was basically just the back and forth in the series was really hilarious. Minnesota wins the first two games. Well, they're the greatest team ever. Denver's screwed. Then Denver wins three in a row. Well, Denver's got them now, and then Minnesota wins the last two to win the series. So it's one of those things. It's I think it's hysterical. The different sides of the coin that everybody goes to, the wild speculation that goes with it. And what I want to talk about first was I think that the way that Nikola Jokic is talked about, it seems like we're just kind of discounting the fact that they just won the championship last year. And so now the media does this, right? They move the goalposts, right? Well, he's winning MVPs, but he can't win in the postseason. So, we're not going to legitimize that. Then he wins the title and they're not going to win it again. And everybody's like, well, what was that really that championship last year? They didn't play any 50-win teams. And, we go back and recalibrate it for some reason. And it's just absolute nonsense. Listen, Jokic is not a top 10 player all time yet. Okay. Like he's working on it. Okay. He won one title. Like, I don't understand these people acting like, now, is there an argument he's the best player in the league? I think he's the best player in the league. You can have a healthy debate on that. I'm fine with that. But just acting like, Denver wasn't really that good or whatever. I feel like we've been poisoned by the fact that teams used to win 2 or 3 in a row all the time. That now we don't have super teams anymore, and now we just have to deal with the fact. Listen, I think Denver's really good, and we'll talk about the Minnesota-Denver series in a minute. But what's your take on the discourse on Jokic and how this just seems to go to lengths that I don't understand.
Yeah, so one of the things I'm really sick of in sports is the revisionist history we always have to do about teams. They win and we're like, oh, they're great, and then something happens later and we go, well, do we really need to rethink what just happened? Do we need to put a different spin on it because, this team lost now and they didn't win another championship? That just seems really arbitrary and ridiculous. Uh, you know, people do it. They do it all the time with a variety of different things. I mean, they've done it with the Lakers winning the championship in the bubble numerous times now. I mean, you go on the internet, it's just, well, Jordan never won any never had to, none of his titles came in strike shortened seasons, which I don't understand why that's a criticism. I don't get it. Like, why is this like, it would almost seem like it would be harder if it's a strike shortened season to win the championship. So yeah, I mean, there's just, there's a, for whatever reason, there's been a backlash against Jokic. It started with him winning the 2 MVPs in a row. And then all throughout the playoffs last year, people just weren't ready to crown them. They're like, oh, the Lakers are going to win. And they swept the Lakers, And so then it's like, oh, I guess they are really good, And then it almost felt like they were setting things up to tear them down because they're like, oh, they're really good. Nobody's on their level. They're just going to win the championship again. And then they lose in 7 games. And they lose a 20-point lead in Game 7, and they get blown out by 45 points in Game 6. And by the way, can I just say something about this? Like, it's really, it really speaks to, like, ignorance when you criticize a team for losing a game by 45 points. I feel like that, that happens a lot, and maybe not 45 points, but getting huge blowouts in the NBA playoffs or the finals happens all the time. Maybe not every single year, but I mean...
Well, it happened in this series. Minnesota blew them out in Game 2. Denver blew out Minnesota in Game 3. Like,
yeah, because teams don't bring it every night in the NBA. To be honest, in professional sports, that's really not the case. Nobody really brings it the same effort every single game in a row. That's not how it works. So, yeah, we've totally lost the ability to be objective with different things where we can just say, hey, this team was really good. They won one title. They haven't won another one. Maybe they'll win another one next year. Who knows? But, you know, just the idea, it's like, well, I guess they just weren't that good in the first place. It's like, look, they won a championship. What do you want me to say? You know, you really think Jokic had no business winning multiple MVPs? Like, really? Really? You just don't, you're just like, oh, well, I just don't like this guy and whatever. You know, I mean, for some people, it's just like with Nick Wright, it's totally clear. He's just pissed off that Jokic is winning because he wanted Giannis to be winning championships and win more MVPs. And then now he wants Luka Doncic to be getting all the love, which, you know, he may end up getting all the love in a couple weeks because he may end up winning the championship. But, yeah, it's just kind of transparent and ridiculous. And it's just, we can't just give guys credit. Everything's like, well, this is my guy and this isn't my guy, so I'm going to rip this guy. Yeah, it's just, you know, Denver's got some flaws, and Minnesota was really set up well to beat them. You know, I mean, we're not getting Denver playing Dallas, so we don't know how that series will kind of play out. I mean, I think that Minnesota's clearly got some offensive issues against Dallas. So,
Yeah, you know, I think that I don't take away from that Minnesota Denver series. Well, Denver's a fraud, and obviously they weren't that good. And it's like first of all, it took 7 games to beat them. So it's not like, what are we talking about here? In a 7 game series, like a little thing here or there can basically win it for one team or the other. I think Minnesota just played really well. Minnesota, for whatever reason, had their number. And honestly, Clark, take like games 2 through 6 out of it. Like the 2 close games, game 1 and game 7, were close in the fourth quarter, and Minnesota won both of them. It's that simple. Like I know nobody wants to boil it down to that, and everything has to be a referendum or an indictment on what these players are based on what happened in these particular games. But that's not how it works. You know, for whatever reason, like, and I think Charles Barkley said this the other night on the broadcast. Basketball is about matchups, and for whatever reason, Minnesota just matched up really well with Denver. They were able to really limit all the other players on the team other than Jokic. And so it just cracks me up that we go back to when Jokic loses, it just goes back to, well, was he really that good? And it's like, no, it's very simple. His teammates didn't play up to the level that they did last year.
right.
End of discussion.
Well, and some of people seem to they seem to be really wrapped up in this who's the best player in the league conversation, which, to be honest, is a little ridiculous. I don't really care. You know, was it Giannis? Oh, no, it's Jokic. Well, no, it's not Jokic now. Now it's going to be Luka, and then it's going to be Anthony Edwards after that. And then it's like, I don't care. All I know is like Luka's really good. Jokic is really good. They're two of the best players in the league right now. You know, Luka's probably going to win one MVP, at least one MVP in the near future. So, yeah, to be honest, a lot of that stuff is just kind of boring. I don't really care. I know they're good. I don't need to have I don't need to split hairs and have a discussion where we can rank one slightly above the other. I mean, it was like when, Durant won with Golden State. Oh, well, Durant's the best player in the league now. It's not LeBron. And it's like, well, I mean, LeBron, his team wasn't good enough to beat Golden State, so now all of a sudden Durant's better than him? Like, come on,
Well, they were doing it
that's
with Curry
arbitrary.
before that.
Yeah. And not nothing against Steph Curry. He's really good. I like watching him, but, come on.
Yeah. Yeah. LeBron shouldn't be measured against the players in the game today. He's
Well,
being
it's
measured
just,
against.
I hate these narrative-based arguments. That's what a lot of these arguments in sports are. They're narrative-based arguments. They're not really based on just objectively analyzing the situation. It's just, well, based on what we've done in the past, this guy now has to be the best player in the league, and this guy, screw him.
Also, there's no nuance, and we'll talk about this in a little while. But whenever the Celtics lose, it's Jason Tatum has to step up. That's what the analysis is, and it's just like, are you guys watching the game? Like, is there anything else you have to say? Like, that's all we're gonna do? Is just criticize this guy because, well, he didn't play well enough. When it's 5-on-5. Like, I love that LeBron said this on the podcast with JJ Redick. He's like, it's 5-on-5. You're not just playing 1-on-1 out here. Like, what are you doing? So yeah,
Yeah.
it just that just blows my mind. But anyway, so let's move on to the Dallas Minnesota series, which let's be honest, the only interesting series in the playoffs right now. The one that's actually competitive, that actually has, some kind of, you know, both teams having a shot. I mean, Clark, just watching. Well, first of all, let's just talk about the last game. I mean, Clark, that was an absolutely awesome game, and I think I said this to you. I think I texted you at one point. Like, if these games are close, like, Minnesota's in trouble because you don't want to be in close games with Luka and Kyrie. You just don't. There's
Yeah,
just specific guys that are good at certain things, and watching that game, I'm just like, I'm like, as soon as Denver started to catch up in the end of the third quarter, I'm like, you guys, like, you better beat this team by double digits. Do not allow them to just hang around. And then at the end of the game, you saw what happened. Luka did what Luka does, and it's amazing to me that, of all the guys that we talk about, Jason Tatum, and he kind of, sometimes he's not always taking the big shot. There's no question about Luka Doncic about what's going to happen. Like, we know what's going to happen. He's literally not afraid of anything, and will just do whatever's necessary in the game to beat you. And that's exactly what happened on that last play. Now, I'm not going to get into the Rudy Gobert conversation about why he was on him one-on-one and all that. Obviously, that's a mistake by Minnesota. And once that happened,
yeah, but Minnesota's offense, the
right,
possession right after that shot, and then the possession before, like, what the hell? Like, it's clear that, like, offensively they struggle to kind of to get anything, to get good looks late in games. Like, it's, if they're hitting their threes, then it's fine, but them getting into the paint, and I don't know what's going on with Anthony Edwards. Like, he was hitting all these mid-range jumpers against Phoenix, and he just doesn't shoot them anymore. I guess he just doesn't have confidence in it, or he doesn't like the matchups when he gets into that position, inside the three-point line. So yeah, that's I just offensively, you can't have a lot of confidence in it. Like, I just don't feel like, what are they going to go to? I mean, Dallas, it's like Kyrie is just a great one-on-one player. Um, Luka is a matchup problem for Minnesota, and they clearly haven't figured out what to do on defense because Dallas keeps getting lob passes for dunks. Like, I mean, it's just insane. So yeah, Minnesota, they're. I mean, I don't think they're going to win the series now. They got big problems.
yeah. I mean, yes. Let's talk about that. So after the game, I mean, first of all, both these games were close. They could have gone either way. Charles
Right.
Barkley was talking about this after the game. He's like, "This is a sweep. It's a bad matchup. There's just nothing. There's nothing Minnesota can do. Blah blah blah." And I'm like, I just I'm having a hard time with that because it's not like Minnesota is doing all of these things wrong. Like, they need to correct a few, they need to correct some stuff here and there, but they could have won both those games if Nas Reed's shots goes in, then it's 1-1. So I just have a hard time. Like, yes, I can understand, like, looking at matchup wise, yes. I understand Dallas has probably got this, and at some point they're probably going to win the series. But I'm not counting Minnesota out yet because they have the ability to. I mean, you just talked about they're not playing great on defense. They're allowing a lot of easy baskets, right? And they're not playing great on offense either. So, and they're right there at the end of these games. So it's hard for
Right.
me to just go, Minnesota's done, blah, blah, blah. Look, as you said, Anthony Edwards can get those, he can go by the guy who's guarding him anytime he wants. So,
Well, the other problem is, I mean, people have started talking about this. I mean, Ant was really good for like the first 6 or 7 games of the playoffs, and his numbers have really trailed off since then. I mean, if he's not knocking down threes, he's not really. I mean, he's getting some assists, but he's not really doing all that much. And I just wonder if, like, this is. And again, I don't want to come down too harshly on him. He's 22 years old. Like,
right.
this is what tends to happen. Like, you get into the playoffs, you lose. You get back to the playoffs, you go a little farther, you lose. You get back to the playoffs again, maybe you break through. So um, we'll see. Again, I'm sure there's adjustments they can make. I mean, they can probably find a way to play better defense than they're playing. Um, but yeah, I just now they're really if they in order to not get down 3-1. I mean, I don't know how they're not going to get down 3-1, or 3-0 potentially. So I just think I don't think there's a way they can come back and actually win the series. They can make it interesting, but
Yeah, I think I yeah, that was just, I mean, that was a hell of a game. And it's one of those things. But I agree with what Stan Van Gundy said at the end of the game. If Anthony Edwards and Carl Anthony Towns don't start playing better, then they're not going to win a game.
Yeah,
And that's the bottom line. So that's basically what it comes down to. But I just think Minnesota's going to have a good offensive game here coming up at some point. There's no way they're going to go 4 or 5 games without playing well on offense in one of them. So so we'll see how it goes. But I want to talk about Luka and Kyrie for a second. Look, I am continually impressed. Every time I go back and think about the arc of Luka's career, or the ascendance of Luka's career. He doesn't have an arc yet. It's just I am constantly impressed by this guy. So like going back, first year, I just remember people talking about him before the draft, and then people not drafting him, which was looks insane now. And then the first year, you're just like, oh, this guy's got something. When a team trusts you right off the bat, all right, you've got the ball. We're going to let you make the decisions. That tells me something. And then the first time when they go to the playoffs in the bubble, okay, and I'm like, well, all right, we'll see how they do against the Clippers. This Clippers team is supposed to be really good, and they lost it, or I think they won the first game, or they lost the first game. I can't remember, but they got banged up. I think Porzingis got injured, or Luka kind of got hurt, or whatever, and he came back even harder. Like the Clippers, not only did he get hurt, but the Clippers were like, "Oh, we're going to be extra physical now." It was like they were trying to be tough, and it was I can't remember the forward's name for the Clippers. And it was like, oh, and then Luka just came right back at him. He pointed the guy was on the ground, and Luka's like, stop flopping. Now he used some other expletives in there too. And I was just like, oh, you know, this guy's at another level. Like, you're not, this isn't, doesn't even phase him. He's like, no big deal. And then when they played the Suns in the playoffs a couple of years ago and beat them in 7 games, and Luka is laughing and making fun of them while he's destroying them in game 7, I went, okay, this guy, this guy's out of control. I don't know what the ceiling is for this guy, but he is a nasty motherfucker on the court. Off the court, you hear him do the interviews. He's the nicest guy ever. Puts on the smile. It's all fantastic. And you saw him they interviewed him after the game the other night. He's like, no, it's what. And he's giving
yeah,
the refs hell. He's yelling at everybody. He's angry at everybody. And I realized, like, this season, I realized that, oh, the arguing with the refs, that's part of it. That's part of it. He's not happy unless he's pissed off and giving somebody the business. So that's how it works. And then, you saw the shot the other night. He's screaming at Gobert. He's telling the fans to go home. Like, I'm like, this guy is. So I'm continually impressed by this guy. And also on the basketball court, his basketball IQ is just, I mean, it's LeBron James level. He's just a genius savant. I can't imagine, or not imagine, but I can't believe how many times the shot clock's running down 10, or it's 5, 4, 3. And it's like, oh, where's he going to go with the ball? And then he hits the open guy and there's an open shot. It's just, it's uncanny the way that he can control a game. And there's just few guys like that. Um, what are your, I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
yeah. I mean, I totally dismissed Dallas before the season because
Yeah,
I
me
was like,
too.
oh, this Kyrie thing is not going to work, and they just traded everything away. I don't understand what the hell they're doing. And I guess they made a trade in the in the middle of the season, and that really helped them out. Um, and this isn't a shot against them, but I mean, you look at the draw they got. They don't have to play Denver. They beat the Clippers, who come on, we don't really trust the Clippers. We don't trust James Harden in the playoffs.
Yep.
You know, Kawhi was in and out of the lineup. And then they get to play Oklahoma City. They're young. They had a better guy to match up with Luka, and it still didn't matter. They lost it. They lost the series in 6 games. And now you get Minnesota, who, while talented and has the ability to play really good defense, clearly they have some shortcomings on offense and in their half court offense. So, you know, he he benefited from the draw. I'm not taking any credit away, but he benefited from the draw. He's been to the playoffs multiple times now. This is the second time he's been in the Western Conference Finals. Um, so he's got a bunch of experience in these games, and he, you know, while I don't necessarily, I prefer to watch more fast-paced action. He seems to be really good at, slowing things down and getting shots for himself, using his size to get foul calls and stuff like that. And then he's a great passer. Um, so yeah, and if Kyrie's going to play like that, I mean, yeah, they have enough to win the championship this year. So anyway, Luka himself, I mean, yeah, the guy's unbelievable. I don't know what I mean. He's gonna win an MVP. I mean, if they win the championship this year, my guess is, barring injury next year, he'll win the MVP because he got votes this year.
Yep.
So, yeah, he's amazing, and like one of the things we people NBA fans like is we like all the trash talking, and just the celebrating after stuff. I like Steph Curry walking around, shimmying and whatever, or I'm trying to think of other guys who are really good trash talkers, but just that's one of the things we really enjoy about the NBA. So yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I don't have a problem with Dallas winning. I mean, at this point, I don't really care. I mean, I thought it would have been cool to see Denver win another one, but and I like Minnesota, but I don't think they're really ready yet. So, and
Yeah, I mean,
Boston,
listen,
I don't
I
trust
told
Boston
you
at all.
I
But
told you before the series, I'm rooting for Dallas. I thought, now you asked me to handicap it. I thought Minnesota would win. And, they're down 2-0. It doesn't look good now. We'll see what happens. But I thought, based on the way they had played, and yeah, I didn't buy into this Dallas thing. I was like, this isn't, whatever. And they were really, they were really good against Oklahoma City, but a couple of those games could have gone either way. They blew a big lead in the game 4, I think. So I was kind of like, oh, I don't know about that. And everybody's talking about the roster. I don't know about this, blah, blah, blah. But it's obvious now that, boy, I was wrong. The general manager has hit a home run the last 2 years. The Kyrie trade worked out perfectly, right? They tanked last season to draft Derek Lively, home run draft pick. Okay. They trade for Gafford. You saw in that game, dude's awesome. Okay. They're getting the contributions they're getting on minimum contracts from Derek Jones Jr., which I'm like, that guy can't guard anybody. And he's one of the best defensive players they have. So yeah, I didn't see this coming. And I give all the credit in the world to them because they have made the Kyrie thing work. They were smart at the end of the last season when people were ripping them. What are you tanking? You're shitting on competitiveness. What are you doing? Well, and I've been a proponent on this podcast numerous times. Tanking works, folks. I know you don't like it. I know it's not fun. I know people are angry about it. I'm sorry. Look at Dallas. Where
yeah,
would
well,
they be without
the
him?
the, the other thing is, I'll say that, like, the way the NBA appears to be the last few years, there's no truly great team.
Right.
So I'm going to agree with Nick Wright, I guess. I mean, I think if you're the team that has the best player in the series, that always matters to an extent. But when you don't have any truly great teams, I think the fact that Luka is the best player remaining in the playoffs, like that to me says, okay, well, I think Dallas has to be the betting favorite to win the championship. Because, I mean, do you trust Jason Tatum or do you trust Luka at the end of close games in a half court situation? You
Well,
trust Luka.
that's the funny part. Like they're the complete opposite, right? Boston does all these things great for 3 quarters, and then you don't trust them at the end of the game. Dallas, you trust at the end of the game implicitly, right? I'm not sure if Kyrie and Luka are going to play defense most of the time. Are they going to keep that up for 4 quarters? And they were behind in this game. You saw that, but at the end of the game, I don't want to play them. I
Yeah.
don't want any part of that because those guys are built for it. Luka and Kyrie, they're just their mentality, their talent, their brain power. They know exactly what they're doing. There's no they don't need to figure anything out. They know how to play, and that's just what it comes down to. Who are the guys who know how to play in the postseason? And just for a second on Kyrie, like when I watched the first game of this series, I'm like, I forgot. I mean, Clark, I forgot how good Kyrie is. Like,
Yeah.
or I don't want to say I forgot. I was reminded how good Kyrie Irving is in that game. When I mean, the thing is, Clark, to go full speed at the basket and then put up these floaters off the glass. Like, Do you understand how difficult that is? There was a shot like on a fast break in game 2, and Stan Van Gundy was like, "Are you kidding me?" Like he's going full speed, has to switch hands in the air, and it's just there's nothing. I don't know what to say about it. Like Bill Simmons was interviewing Isaiah Thomas on his podcast, the Isaiah Thomas from the '80s from the Detroit Pistons, and he was just like, "Dude, Kyrie just my jaw's on the floor with him. I can't believe how amazing this guy is." And it's just, and that's the sad part. The sad part is on the court, he's always been great. It's not
Yeah.
like, oh my God, his game's fallen off. His game has never fallen off. He's always been unbelievable. But it's all the off the court stuff. So yeah, to watch these two together, it's just like, oh man, it's incredible. So look, let's jump out on a limb here. Well, it's a pretty strong limb. Dallas in the finals, Clark. Assuming they win this series, I mean, how much are you looking forward to, seeing Luka in the finals, number one, and then the possibility of Kyrie Irving playing Boston again?
Yeah. So there was somebody on Twitter who said that's like the ultimate villain move if he gets to the finals and beats Boston, even though he kind of, I guess you could say he screwed with Boston or something. I don't know. I don't know how you want to. I don't want to get really into that, but yeah, that's kind of funny. So, and I just like, not to switch to Boston, but so Porzingis, he was going to be out several games. So is he coming back or?
They were talking about game 4 is what the latest report was,
Oh,
which will be
because I
tomorrow.
thought it was like, after game 2, and now it's
Right.
game 4.
Right.
Watch
So
it. It's going to turn into game 7, and then
there's
not going to be a 7th game in that
right.
series. But
I was looking today to try to find information on it. There's nothing new out there, so we'll see what happens. But yeah,
even if he comes back, how good is he going to be? He comes back in the finals. He hasn't played in like a month and a half. Like,
yeah, it's we'll move on to Boston and Indiana. Look, I mean, Boston's obviously going to win the series. Indiana blew game 1, and they could have won game 3. So it's that's the thing, Clark. Boston is winning the series, but you're like, yeah. I mean, Boston just leaves something to be desired. There's just something about it. They should have lost game 1. They should have lost game 3. Like, and they're up 3-0. It's like, okay, you guys are getting the job done, but they were losing to Indiana without Halliburton.
yeah,
For 3.5 quarters. It's just like, come on, Boston, and so yeah, I continue not to, I just don't find them trustworthy. And this is the thing, and I want to make this point. This is not because I don't trust Jason Tatum or don't believe in Jason Tatum, okay? That's what it always goes back to. It's, oh, well, and in the game 1, he had 36 points or whatever, but he didn't come through in the fourth quarter when they needed it. He came through in the overtime, which they shouldn't have been in anyway. And so it turns into, oh, well, it's because of Tatum. No, the problem with the Celtics is the coach, okay? It's the way their style of play, okay, lends itself to, if things don't go well, it can look really bad when you're just shooting all kinds of threes, and that's what your entire game is, right? And especially with Porzingis out, it looks like, what are you doing? And that's what all the Boston fans are going to tell us. Well, when we get Porzingis back, and that's the funny part. The funny part about it, Clark, is that Boston actually matches up better with Dallas because they have Porzingis than Minnesota, because they can pull, Porzingis, whoever's guarding Porzingis, they can pull Dallas's big guys away from the basket.
right.
Which is one of Dallas's main advantages, is their rim protection with the two big guys. So they force Dallas to maybe do some stuff and make them uncomfortable. What are you going to do? Who are you going to put Lively and Gafford on? How are you going to deal with that if Porzingis is playing? If Porzingis isn't playing, then Dallas is just significantly bigger than them. And you're playing Al Horford 40 minutes. And it's just, and it's just like, yeah, Boston won all these regular season games in the Eastern Conference, and it's just kind of like, so what I have a problem with is, this has not come down to, oh, well, Jason Tatum's not good enough, or that's the question. No, that's not the issue. Jason Tatum is one of the top 10 players in the league. I think he's probably 7 or 8. He's closer to 10 than he is to 5. And so that's what bothers people. It's like, oh, he should be doing blah, blah, blah. And because the way the playoffs worked out this year, Clark, that the Eastern Conference is so bad, the level of competition is so much less than the West, there's nothing Boston can do to make everybody happy. The only thing Boston can do is win the championship. And the other thing, And as far as that goes, yeah, Boston needs to win the title, but it's not like, oh my God, if they don't win, we got to break it up. Like, they're not breaking anything up. They're going to have Tatum and Brown there for the next 5 years at least, and they're
Yeah.
going to get a crack at this every single year.
Yeah.
So there's no shame in them losing, but Boston, unfortunately for Boston, the only thing they can do to prove things to us or other people is to win the title or play really well in the finals. Make it clearly obvious that they're good enough to win the championship, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think that the criticism of Jason Tatum is ridiculous. Like, I think he's 26. Give him some time. Let's see what
Well, and
happens.
again, the coaching thing, I just don't know
Right,
that they always put themselves in the best position to succeed.
right.
You can't just do threes and layups all the time and expect to win the championship. You got to be able to move the ball and create offense. That's one of the biggest. I think, to be honest, that can be just a general point just about the playoffs. It's like okay, forget all the players you have and what they can individually do. Do you have a system in place on offense where you can create good shots when you need it, right? Because if you don't, like for instance, Denver had that. Now, unfortunately, they came up against a bad matchup against Minnesota. They still almost won the series.
Right.
Okay, Minnesota, I don't know how well they create shots. With their offensive system. Dallas, because they have Luka, the way things work with that, he can make everything work. Boston, they got to hit threes. And, yeah, you're going to get some drives to the basket, and then you just try to play defense. But that, in certain situations, that's not going to be good enough. And then if you don't have anything else to go to, like, what are you supposed to do? And it's too simplistic to say, well, Tatum just needs to take over. No, that's not entirely accurate.
Well, and when Tatum tries to take over, you see what happens. It's step back 25 footers. And
Yeah.
so that's my, and I'm not, that my only thing with Jason Tatum is, like, the people who want to tell me how amazing he is. The only problem with Jason Tatum is if his step back three is going in, he looks great. He looks like one of the greatest players of all time. You've seen it. He scored 50 points against the Philadelphia 76ers last year. He had 40 something against Milwaukee. Like, he can have huge games in the playoffs. Lots of guys have huge games in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't mean that you've got it all figured out and you're now, the best of the best. And that's the problem with Tatum is that he's not really a top 5 player, and he's not one of these, he's not one of these guys. He's not Jokic or Luka or Giannis. He's not one of those guys. So that turns it into, well, why isn't he? And that's what happens when you're on that team and you're the best player on that team. So, but yeah, I just want to, we'll see what happens with the Celtics. Now, are the Celtics capable of winning the title? Sure. I'm not disagreeing with that, but you're asking me who I'm picking in a series. And I already said before this series started, I'm picking Dallas or Minnesota in the finals. I don't think there's a question about it. I think, we'll see what happens with Porzingis, but if they don't get, and that's the other thing, like you just said, like, they need Porzingis to be like 100%, like balling, like if he's just kind of okay.
If he's just
Like,
playing 20 minutes a night or something and trying to get back into, whatever, or if you try to play him more than that and then he's totally gassed in the fourth quarter, like, what's the point?
yeah,
I mean, I'm sorry, I feel like this happens every playoff. Some guy gets hurt and they're like, well, he'll be back in a couple games. I don't know, it'll be a couple more. Another week, he'll be back. Yeah. Beginning of this series, yeah, he'll be back. Yeah. Well, no, a little later in the series. You know what, next series. And it's just like, okay, you guys can keep leading me on.
Well, and the thing is, Clark, the argument can be made, why play him now? You're up 3-0. Like, there's no
Yeah.
reason to play him. They should just sit him. So then he won't have played. Like, I guess he played in the first round. Did he play in the first round? Who did they play?
Yeah,
They played
I
Miami.
thought so.
Yeah, I think he can play the first couple games or whatever. So it's like, oh, it's okay. He's just been out 6 weeks. It's it's no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's all right. So before we get out of here, I want to run down some thoughts that I have. Number one, I mean, I've declared victory several times on the James Harden front, but I feel like this should be the nail in the coffin, this Clippers series that they just lost, where he looked, pretty average. So I feel like now I think that may be more of a Clippers problem, and we'll see what happens. Now James Harden's going to be a free agent, and I'm sure some team will have no problem paying him. But I was all over this from the beginning. Like that trade was bad news. Now Philadelphia has gotten themselves into a pretty good position. Now they have lots of cap space, and we'll see what they do. So it may have worked out for them in the long run. But
Possibly, but the problem is Embiid can't stay healthy.
oh yeah, yeah.
So, I mean,
Philadelphia's got lots of issues. But not bringing James Harden back was a smart move. Finally trading him away was a smart move. I don't think getting him in the first place was really intelligent, but at least they were able to move off of him. So yeah, I just think you saw it. I think James Harden's an also ran player. I don't know what the hell the Clippers do. They have Kawhi signed for the next 2 or 3 years, but Paul George and James Harden are free agents. And yeah, I want to address this before we get to free agency in about a month. I don't know if people realize this. Paul George is going to be in his 15th year now. So everybody's like, oh, well, if they get Paul George, like, yeah. Paul George has been around a while. He was drafted in 2010. Like, Paul George is on the back six holes of his career. So I don't think Paul George is like, oh, we got to get him. He'll change our franchise. He's not a franchise changing player anymore.
yeah.
He might have been that at one point, but he's not anymore. Did you have anything you wanted to say about that? James Harden?
I mean, look, James Harden at this point, he is what he is, right?
Yep.
He won an MVP. He's a talented player who put up some really good numbers. You can argue he would have won a championship if Chris Paul didn't get hurt that one year. And that's kind of it. I mean, he's been consistently underwhelming in the playoffs. There's a few games here and there you can point to where he was pretty good or hit a big shot, but for the most part, he kind of ran out of gas. And and also, excuse me, he's also a player who a lot of people criticize because they didn't really like watching his game because it seemed like most of his game was predicated on getting his arms up as he drove toward the basket so he could get foul calls, and he was really good at it. And maybe I shouldn't criticize that because we're Miami Heat fans and we're fans of Dwayne Wade. And, for a lot of the time, he made a career out of, getting up into the air and getting somebody to bump into him so you could get a foul call. So
yeah, him and Jimmy Butler are really good at that. Yeah. Okay. So my other thought was like it all came out like after Phoenix lost. That who are they going to trade? The Knicks should got to try to get Durant, and they should trade this guy, and they should trade that guy.
right.
They're not trading anybody. They're just firing coaches. Which I mean, good lord.
Yeah. Can I just point out? I love what they did here. So they hired Mike Vogel to a 5-year contract. They fire him after 1 year. As if I feel like Matt Ishbia, and again, I don't have any sourcing to back this up, but it feels like he's treating this like any other business where it's like, well, I put you in charge and you didn't deliver the results I wanted, so you're out of there. But that's not professional sports is completely different. Okay.
Right.
Because in a regular business, you can go, especially if you have a lot of money, you can go, I want this person from that business, and you could actually get him. In professional sports, it's like, I want that guy. Well, sorry, he's under contract with them and you can't get him. Well, can we trade for him? They don't want to trade. Oh, all right. This is all we can do. So it's not a fair analogy. And then, the idea that then he signs another coach to another 5-year contract. I'm like, well, that seems, I mean, how much, like, are you going to fire him too when you guys don't win the championship next year? How much money are you going to be paying coaches to not coach your team?
Well, and is there a big difference between Monty Williams, Frank Vogel, and Mike Budenholzer? I mean, really?
I don't think so.
What's the difference? I don't know. I don't understand. Like Frank Vogel's won a title. You fired him. And now you're hiring another coach that won a title. Okay, it's like I just So yeah, but my main point was that Phoenix isn't trading anyone. The guy paid $6 billion for the team. He's not trading these guys. He went through all this crap to get Kevin Durant and get Devin Booker. He's not trading them. So I know it's sexy and fun and that's all interesting to talk about and whatever, but guys, nobody on Phoenix is going anywhere. So stop with the nonsense.
They're not
Stop
going
talking
anywhere.
about.
And by the way, when they made those moves and people like us and other people said this isn't going to work, we were right. It's not going to work. They're not going to win a championship. They didn't
Right.
win it this year. They're not going to win it next year. Bradley Beal is continuing to struggle to stay healthy. Durant magically stayed healthy this year, but I don't think you can count on that moving forward. And Durant and Bradley Beal are older players.
Yep.
Like you have a undersized old team. Devin Booker, look, I like Devin Booker, but he's a scorer. He doesn't impact your culture at all. Like before Devin Booker got Chris Paul with him, I mean, Phoenix, they sucked.
Yeah.
Okay, so Devin Booker's not the guy to like build your franchise around. He can be on your team and be a scorer and be a significant piece of a team that can go far in the playoffs. We've seen him do that. But yeah, so now you're left with you're undersized. You don't have a lot of options because of the way the salary cap is structured now. You got older players, and you've got Budenholzer, a coach who is most known for not making adjustments other than winning a championship with the Bucks. So, yeah, you're stuck into this, and it's not going to work. And so, all you people who fell in love with it and like, oh, you can just build a team this way. No, you can't. You really can't.
Yeah, and then it cracks me up with people who are, in love with Phoenix. No, number one, Colin Cowherd. It's like, oh well, they got to get a point guard, and they got to get. It's like, yeah, but that was what we were telling you, last year when they made the stupid Bradley Beal trade. Like now you can't get those guys anymore. You can't get the guy that can help you, the center that can help you. You can't get a point guard to set everything up for everybody. You can't do that because you've tapped yourselves out by
Yep.
by by doing all this. So, the Bradley Beal trade just kind of put them into a really difficult spot. And I don't think, and the same thing with the Lakers. Like, what are you blaming the coach for? We're going to blame Darvin Ham because the Lakers lost to Denver. So what? Lots of people lose to Denver.
Yeah.
You're not going to beat them. Sorry. Like, I'm looking at your team. Like, your roster is what it is. Like, I
Yeah.
liked a lot of the offseason moves. Well, I was wrong. Your team still isn't very good. So, we could talk about that all day long. You can do whatever you want with LeBron. You can bring in, and, we should talk about this before we get out of here. Please, JJ Redick, don't take the Lakers job. Don't do it. Don't do it. Number one, for my benefit, because I like watching your podcast, and he's doing the finals on television. Like, you're
Yeah.
really going to coach this Lakers team, really? Where there's really no way to win. You're going to be, if it doesn't work out, you're getting fired.
Yeah.
Like there's no, so yeah, I just think I think it's a bad idea, and people
Well,
blaming coaches just
the
blow my
Lakers,
mind.
I don't want to go too deep into this, but I mean, the Lakers organization, what are they at this point? I mean, they've missed the playoffs a bunch of times over the last, I don't know, 10, 12 years. Um, they don't seem to do the best job hiring coaches, or if they do hire, like Frank Vogel was a pretty good coach. He won a championship with him. I don't know why the hell they fired him. They made that stupid Russell Westbrook trade. That was ridiculous. You know, um, they're not one of the richer teams in the league. Although people may be surprised to hear that, it's like, no, they're really not. They're a family-owned business that's basically still beholden to stuff that happened, 15, 20, 30 years ago, as opposed to, what's going on now. So the idea that like the Lakers is a great job or something, I mean, I don't really. It's really not. He's like, oh, well, they have LeBron. Yeah, you have LeBron in year 21. You know, you have Anthony Davis. Yeah, and Anthony Davis is pretty good, but yeah, they're just. I don't see why that's like a glamour job. I mean, I could maybe see like if you wanted to say the Knicks were maybe. I don't know. I just don't think it's a job that most people really want. The Phoenix job either. Why would you want that? It's not like people were clamoring to hire Mike Budenholzer. So that should tell you something.
No, I mean, Clark, the reason you take the job is because you'll probably get 4 years of money where you don't have to do anything.
Well, okay, there you go. That's
That's
the
why you
reason.
take the job. Like, are you
Exactly.
kidding me? You grab that thing, coach's money. Yeah, it's just the Lakers are where they are right now, and that's just kind of the way it is. But yeah, if they don't have LeBron, what is this franchise? LeBron is basically it. And we'll see. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, looking forward to the game tonight. We got a game starting a little over half an hour. Minnesota trying to win a game in Dallas, and Dallas trying to basically put the hammer lock on the series. Yeah, I'm super excited. I would love to see Luka and Dallas in the finals. I think that would be tremendous. And playing against the Celtics would be a fun matchup. So I'm looking really looking forward to it.
Yep.
All right.
Should be
Thanks
good.
for tuning in, everybody. Everyone have a lovely evening. Happy Memorial Day.